Hello and welcome to another edition of the Manager's video blog here in the city of Latrobe. My name is Alex Graziani and I'm happy you've taken a moment to join us. Joining me today is Eric Bartels. Eric is a good friend of mine. He and his wife Melissa live up above the hospital here in the city of Latrobe. And not only are we friends, but we also go to church together. And that really serves as the backdrop for why Eric's with me and for today's conversation. Eric?
Thanks, Alex. As Alex mentioned, we go to church together, and I'm currently teaching an adult Sunday school class on America's Christian Heritage is really the title of the class. And for this particular Sunday's lesson that we're going to use, it has to do with the idea of Christians in the civil arena. So I thought that Alex would be a perfect candidate to interview and help add to some of the conversation that will go on in the class. So Alex, if you don't mind, I've got several questions I'd like to ask you. It's clear from having known you that your faith isn't just something that's even part of your daily life, but it's also something that you apply to your career as well. So the question that I have for you as a city manager, a public official, in what ways, if any, have you encountered any kind of roadblocks as to promoting Christian values in the workplace?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, I feel that my career is a calling. When I look at the scriptures, I see in it that God has ordained, if you will, three spheres of authority within society: the family, the state, and the church. And each of those exist for the glory of God. The family and the church are the places where theological formation and worship take place. The state is the sphere which God has granted the authority to protect people and property. And the beauty of it, that it does come from God, is that God appoints servants of His to be public servants in the local, state, and federal governments. So I do see what I do as a calling. Your question, though, specifically was about roadblocks. And, quite frankly, not any at this point. To the extent that as a manager of people, as a subordinate to a city council, and as a public servant to the residents of Latrobe, my values of trying to be honest, to be fair, to be just, to be kind, to serve others above self, are very compatible with the workplace. And for the most part, whether it's employees or the public, they appreciate straightforwardness and long for governments that do right, regardless of the consequences politically. They want our government to do right.
Well, thank you. That's refreshing to hear. One of the topics that always comes up when we talk about faith and politics and so on is the idea of the separation of church and state, a phrase that comes from a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to a church in Connecticut way back. But a clear understanding of what Jefferson meant really shows us not so much that he didn't want churches and the government to be able to interact, but just the idea that a government shouldn't be allowed to come in and control a church, nor should the government give favor to one church over another in the political realm. So in what ways does the city of Latrobe interact with faith-based organizations in the community?
I prefaced my first answer to your first question with the idea of the realm that God has granted to the three spheres: family, church, and state. And I said in there that to the extent that the family and the church are the bastions of theological development and worship, the state should have no say in there. There's no state church. There's no promotion of a state church. But in our community, we happen to have a very rich and active faith community. We're here at the Latrobe Presbyterian Church, a faith community that has its roots back to 1774, even before the founding of our nation. There was a congregation of people of faith here who met. That still exists today. One of the special aspects of this community is its faith in action, which is no mistake that I use that term. We have an organization even that the churches have grouped together to work out their faith in action of service to others. The city of Latrobe loves the fact that communities of faith serve people, and whether they're faith communities of other Christian organizations or non-Christian organizations, to the extent that they're serving our community, we welcome that. If I could be specifically, Eric, or cite a specific thing, a lot of people worry about the tax exemption that churches have. And one of my thoughts when I hear that, though it's a very serious one to consider, is that if it weren't for the churches and people of faith within Latrobe, I would probably have to double my police force. The restraining of evil and the promotion of doing right and good within the community is very tempering to the nature, if you will, of humanity here within our community. So to the extent that they help us in keeping our costs down, that's a good thing. And I don't mind having that exchange and tax exemption. At a specific level, I'm trying to work out a way that the faith community works to support its government as it is commanded in scriptures.
Great. Do you find that your office approaches organizations within the city, or do they more come to you when they have ideas with what they need done or what they'd like to do?
More coming to us. You know, I think what we've tried to promote, or I've tried to promote, is that the city is welcoming their ideas to serve one another within community. And if we can be a part of that, maybe there's a cleanup that happens for a person who's a shut-in and they need some help that maybe Public Works can provide. You know, we'd like to do that. Certainly, as they do their various fairs and festivals, they come to us for permission, which we grant under conditions like everyone else, where there's no special treatment there. And again, they at times rely on certain things for us to help. For example, the police may close off a street. So it's mainly them interacting, coming to us.
Thanks. Coming back to Thomas Jefferson, some might argue that regardless of what a founding father intended with the separation of church and state, some might argue that faith should play no role at all in public affairs, whether that's your role as a city manager or any public official. And you've mentioned, already within the interview about your, overall view of faith in the workplace. But how would you respond to someone who says faith should play no role in public decision making?
My faith is who I am. My faith drives my desire to love the Lord my God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. It also is the underlying desire for me to love my neighbor as myself and to put their needs above my own needs, whether that's in my house and my wife and my children who I long to serve and really uphold by my service and my love. And it's the same with my co-workers. My goal when I go to work is grounded in my faith. Moreover, it's in the community that I serve. I really believe that God has called me specifically to the community of Latrobe to be his servant and to love his people. And God loves love people. That's what he's in the business of doing. All of that is grounded in my faith. To separate my faith from myself would be to detach my actions from the underpinnings of the motivating factors in them. So I find it interesting that people would say we need to be devoid of faith in the workplace, because then what would I be operating on? What values would I assume? Again, people long for their government to do right, regardless of the outcome. They want us to be honest and straightforward. They want us to be very just and fair. In order to do that, you must be a person of high principles and deep, strong, committed values. How will you do that apart from faith? I don't know, because for me, I couldn't. If it wasn't for my relationship with God and his son, Jesus Christ, I couldn't be those things. Or at least I would even more so lack the motivation to want to be able to do those things in the workplace, to love my neighbor as myself.
Next question I have for you has to do not so much with your role, but as myself, as a member of this community and other Christians. What do you need, or even what would you expect from Christians within the community to help bring this city or their own community more towards Christ-likeness?
I love the question, because as people of faith, God is being very specific with Christians, with his children, that they must pray for the government. If you will, through the family and through the church, there's a very close relationship, particularly because they are the ones where worship is primarily found. They have that close relationship with God in dialogue and in outliving their lives by praying for the leaders, from the president and his staff to the Congress and the Senate, from the governor and his staff to the House of Representatives here, or the state representatives in the state Senate in Harrisburg, to the county commissioners in Greensburg, to the mayor, Barbara Griffin, here in Latrobe, or our city council members, and then again to the staff that supports. We need Christians to follow the mandate God has set for them, to pray for their leaders. For leaders are servants of God for their good. And that is the good for all. And it's important that they be supported by prayer. If I can, just real quickly. Remember the imagery of Moses leading the children out of the promised land. And there was a picture where they were fighting the Amalekites. And while they were fighting them, it seemed that as Moses held the rod high, the victory was won for the children of Israel. And as his arms tired, it seemed to not go their way. So Aaron and Hur came alongside. They came alongside, and one holding up one arm and one holding up the other arm were able to get the victory. And I see that as the way it should work. The prayers of the saints in the church, holding up the government to be able to, no matter what, do right, to be just, to be fair, to be predictable and honest, those kinds of things that people long for in their government. We would not be able to do that if it wasn't for the prayers of the saints.
Thanks. And the last question is along those lines. As my class watches this video, what could we as our Sunday school class or anyone else watching at home pray specifically for you to help lift you up in your job?
Specific prayer requests are, that we'll be able to carry out God's role in our lives in serving this community. We serve to protect people and property in this community. That's our role of local government. So we need that to be carried out again well. Please pray for the safety of our police officers and our firemen and the workers, our public workers. Every day they do things that are kind of strenuous and they can get hurt that way, but our police officers and our firemen put their lives on the line a lot, and they need to be supported in prayer. You think about how we're getting to be aware of praying for the military and the needs of the stresses that come with military life. Our police officers face that on a daily basis. Unfortunately, they deal with some of the worst elements in society, and that creates a lot of stress and pressure on them and their families. So it's very important specifically to pray for them, pray for our elected officials finally, again, that they be fair-minded, that they do rightly, and that they are just in their decision-making.
Well, thank you very much. That's all the questions that I have for you today.
Yeah, and I appreciate the fact that you've taken the time, Eric. I enjoy our friendship, and looking forward to hearing how this video impacts both your Sunday school and our community here in Latrobe. Thank you for taking the time today to join in this manager's video blog. As always, my door is open, and please, if you can, stop by and visit me, or drop me an email or give me a phone call. Thank you.